You have carried the profound, silent fear that the creator of the universe has somehow misplaced your identity, allowing your name to quietly slip through the cracks of his majestic attention. You have watched the people you deeply love slowly drift away. You have experienced the heavy reality of unreturned calls, and you have sat in completely quiet rooms wondering if the Father in heaven operates with the exact same fading, fragile memory. You have been carrying this exhausting dread for so long that you no longer even recognize it as a heavy burden. It has simply become the cold, silent background noise of your daily existence. A daughter who learned somewhere very young that being remembered required constantly earning it, has been frantically earning ever since, deeply terrified that a single pause will cause her to disappear from view. There's a son who has not received a single phone call from his earthly father on the right day in decades, and he has slowly begun to assume, without ever quite saying it out loud, that the Almighty God keeps the exact same kind of inconsistent, flawed calendar. But I am speaking to you today to firmly declare that the divine memory of the Almighty absolutely does not function like the easily distracted, easily exhausted attention of human beings. Today, we are stepping completely beyond your deepest insecurities to uncover the profound, unshakable truth about how heaven actually remembers you. If you are deeply tired of feeling like you have to constantly perform just to merit a single glance from the Creator, you must anchor your soul to this profound prophetic message. We are going to permanently dismantle the heavy illusions of abandonment and reveal exactly where your name has been forever placed. This deep dread of being unremembered did not assemble itself inside your soul out of nowhere. It was slowly and quietly built by the heavy disappointments of your earthly journey. A parent once walked past you in the hallway without seeing the careful face you had arranged for them to notice, and your young, fragile soul silently concluded that perhaps you were not as visible as the other children. In the picture frames, a sibling was openly preferred in front of you at the dinner table, and the cold, silent math of comparison permanently wired itself into the way. You would later read every single room you entered. A trusted school friend suddenly dropped you for a brighter, louder circle of people and never offered a single explanation. And that unexplained ending became the heavy template by which you would later interpret every long silence from heaven. Even in places of worship, you watched as the visible, loud believers were constantly celebrated, while the quiet, faithful believers in the back row received only the dim, passing recognition due to dim presences. You slowly absorbed the heavy, toxic illusion that being remembered by God must absolutely depend on being visible enough, loud enough, and successful enough to merit the divine glance. None of those teachers were the Creator. A few of them loved you in their own tired, human way, simply passing along the inattention they themselves had received, while others used your deep craving to be seen as a lever to extract your loyalty. Both sources produced the exact same falsified picture, that being remembered is conditional, that it must be heavily earned, and that it can be easily withdrawn. You must firmly put that completely false picture down right now, because it was drawn by hands that were never his. At some point in your spiritual formation, a heavy idea took root inside your mind that God's memory of you operates exactly like a cold, transactional ledger sitting in the corner of a massive desk. You were falsely taught that there is a column for prayers offered, a column for offerings given, and a column for the obediences you managed to achieve in any particular week. Someone deeply deceived you by teaching that being remembered required a fresh, heavy deposit on Monday morning, and that an absence of deposit by Friday afternoon meant the entry beside your name had begun to permanently fade. You have been viewing his attention as something that works exactly like a busy human employer, drawn only to whoever sent the most recent memo, distracted by whoever is loudest in the meeting, and turned more readily toward high performers while entirely ignoring the quiet ones in the back. That is absolutely not how the Creator remembers, and that has never been how He remembers. This heavy image currently lodged in your rib cage, a temperamental attention that requires constant feeding, a recall that fades when you grow tired, was sketched by pencils that have never been held in the hand of the Almighty. The Almighty God does not keep your name in a fragile ledger that can be erased, misplaced, or forgotten when the season changes. A ledger can be easily wiped clean. It fades when the ink runs dry, and it sits on a desk where other priorities can easily slide it off into the shadows. My memory of you is not a ledger. My memory of you is a profound, unshakable, eternal carving. The ancient prophet Isaiah delivered a majestic, unbreakable promise directly to a community of exiles who felt completely abandoned in Babylon, declaring that God has engraved them on the palms of His hands. The city of their origin had fallen, the temple had been stripped, and the roads back had become completely overgrown roots. Around the low fires of those exiled rooms, one massive fear rode on every chest. They believed they were completely forgotten, that even the mother city of their birth no longer thought of her scattered children. They assumed that if the city had forgotten them, the God who promised the city had also moved on. Into that heavy, suffocating silence, the Almighty handed those exiles, and He hands you today, a single sentence built to be kept close for the rest of your generations. Behold, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. I need you to profoundly understand the sacred weight of that specific word. He did not say written, because a word can be easily erased. He did not say painted, because a pigment can slowly fade in the sun. He did not say stamped, because a stamp can be reissued with entirely different names. He said engraved, cut in, carved directly into the skin of the hand itself with the kind of majestic permanence that absolutely does not depend on your ongoing human effort to maintain. Once the engraving has happened, the engraving stays forever. Before we move deeper into the beautiful architecture of His continuous attention, I need you to completely release the heavy burden of trying to earn His memory right now. I want you to open your mouth right where you are listening to this broadcast and make this bold, audible declaration of faith to permanently silence the shadows of abandonment. Say this out loud with absolute, unyielding authority. I am not in a ledger. My name is engraved on His hand. When you vocalize that profound truth, you are firmly dismantling the fragile illusions of your past, proving to the spiritual realm that your soul is finally resting in the unshakable, eternal memory of the living God. You have spent years measuring the Creator's profound love using the deeply flawed, fragile gauge of human attention, constantly asking whether the level in His divine recall matches the inconsistency you experience from the people around you. You must deeply and soberly understand that that human gauge will completely lie to you. Every single time, human attention runs incredibly small. It grows heavily tired, and it is easily drawn elsewhere by the endless distractions of a busy lifetime. My attention is the majestic, unbreakable substance by which the entire universe is held together. Measuring the memory of God with the memory of a human being is exactly like trying to weigh a massive, roaring ocean with a tiny kitchen scale. Such a fragile instrument simply cannot read what is actually there. When the ancient prophet Isaiah declared that your walls are continually before him, he was delivering a massive, unbreakable spiritual truth directly from the heart of heaven. Continually means without a single pause, without a moment of interruption, and without the slightest shadow of distraction. There is absolutely no moment in time where the eye of the Almighty drifts away to attend to something he finds more pressing. There's nothing in the entire universe that he finds more pressing than the small, delicate architecture of your daily life. He does not just remember your walls during the seasons when you are spiritually strong, and he does not only focus on your boundaries when you have been performing well. He holds your structures, your shelters, and your daily shape in one continuous, unblinking, majestic gaze for too many years. You have allowed the heavy silence of the world to dictate your standing in the kingdom of heaven. A widow lights a single lamp on the 8th evening after a profound loss, and silently wonders if absolutely anyone is counting the dark evenings with her. 3 streets over from her, a young soul has been told her whole life that she was an accident, and her hand still quietly flinches when someone reaches for it without warning. An older man has watched his adult children slowly rebuild their lives in distant cities that no longer return his calls, and that heavy, prolonged silence has trained his weary soul to expect the exact same silence from the Creator. I am declaring to you today that not one of those quiet, painful rooms is hidden from the eye of the Almighty. Every single unreturned message has been perfectly logged. Every evening lamp has been counted with profound tenderness. When a friend gradually stops asking how your loneliness is going, because your answer no longer seems to change, and when your morning prayers grow briefer, because the longing has started to feel like proof of your abandonment, you must firmly realize that each shortened word still lands directly on the right hand of the Father. There's absolutely no impatience rising in heaven about how slowly you have come to believe. You are remembered. There's only a massive, overwhelming tide of divine tenderness. God is not checking a high shelf to see whether you have earned this hour of his attention. The carving on his right hand is vastly older than your obedience. It is profoundly older than your deepest failure. And it is older than the very first day you learned to ask for love by performing well. You must firmly separate the fragile nature of human relationships from the unshakable permanence of God's eternal memory. The drifting of human friendships is absolutely not a verdict on your eternal worth. It is simply the natural fragility of human attention across a busy, exhausting lifetime. People you have deeply loved are not unloving you in their forgetting. They are simply being finite, tired humans. My remembering of you absolutely does not depend on their remembering of you. The full, beautiful shape of who you are stands before the Creator continually, even while the small circle of human friendships around you is being quietly remodeled and shifted by the passing years, if a long, heavy illness has worn you down to the point that you now suspect even the medical team has begun to confuse which face belongs to which chart. You must anchor your soul to this profound truth. What is carved into the skin of the Almighty does not depend on the alertness of your physicians. They are tired, they are imperfect, and they are human. He is not. The chart of your ultimate healing is not a piece of paper that can be casually misplaced in a busy office. The chart of your healing is permanently engraved on the exact same hand that carries your name. And the divine engraver absolutely never loses what he has carved. Even if you are a parent grieving a child who has drifted into a dark life you can no longer reach, you must firmly know that a child who has ceased calling you has absolutely not ceased being carved into the hand of God. They are not lost in the manner you have been so heavily afraid they were lost. They remain completely inside the shape He is still attending to continuously, even when that shape stays completely invisible to your human eye. Before we transition into the final protocol of finding profound rest in this divine memory, I need you to establish a powerful, physical anchor for your faith right now. I want you to press the pad of your thumb gently against the center of your opposite palm, right where a carpenter's hand once held a heavy nail. Keep that light pressure there, and notice how a faint warmth slowly gathers in that specific spot. That small, physical contact is the exact image of how you are permanently held in the awareness of heaven. I want you to open your mouth right where you are listening to this prophetic broadcast and make this bold, audible declaration of faith to permanently dismantle the spirit of fear. Say this out loud with absolute, unyielding authority. I am constantly seen, and His attention never drifts. When you vocalize that profound submission, you are firmly rejecting the fragile measurements of human love, permanently proving to the spiritual realm that your mind is deeply anchored in the continuous, majestic gaze of the Most High God. You have listened to the heavy, deceptive voices that claim your past failures have somehow permanently erased your identity from the Creator's hand. You have quietly absorbed the false teaching that your mistakes, your seasons of doubt, and your moments of profound weakness have completely disqualified you from His continuous, loving attention. But I am declaring to you today, with the absolute authority of heaven, that a divine engraving simply cannot be reversed by your worst week. The carving on His majestic palm is absolutely not subject to your changing behavior. It profoundly predates your behavior, and it will majestically outlast your behavior. There is absolutely no version of any day on which the mark has been temporarily removed because you were difficult that morning. There is no version of any week on which the mark has been suspended pending a spiritual review. There's no version of any decade in your entire life, including the heavy decades you most deeply regret, during which the mark was put on hold. Anyone who informed you that your failure had erased your name from His hand was speaking a fragile, toxic falsehood that the Almighty never authorized. You are completely free to let that deception quietly walk out of the sacred room of your soul right now, and you absolutely do not need to argue with it ever again. The mark has held its unshakable, profound position on His palm without a single millisecond of interruption. As you walk forward into the ordinary, quiet hours of your coming week, you must intentionally train your mind and your physical body to properly receive this massive, profound peace, much of what the Holy Spirit does beneath the surface of a tired, heavy life arrives without any loud trumpets or spectacular cinematic displays. One ordinary morning, the heavy fear of being completely forgotten will simply loosen its grip on your chest, for reasons you cannot humanly explain. One quiet afternoon, an old, deep wound will rise up to the surface, but it will no longer completely flood your mind with panic, because something profound beneath the surface has beautifully worn down the sharp stone that the wound used to bounce off of. One peaceful nightfall, you will slide directly into a deep sleep without frantically itemizing every single reason you might have been overlooked that day. Each of these quiet instances is simply the eternal engraving becoming briefly, beautifully visible inside the architecture of an ordinary life. You must learn to profoundly honor those moments and linger inside them. When a small, unexpected mercy surfaces inside your weakest stranger's sudden kindness arriving exactly at the hour your loneliness was the loudest, a buried memory of being purely loved rising up, or the unexpected return of a friend's voice after many silent months, you must firmly resist the urge to casually label it a coincidence. You must lean closer toward that specific moment and recognize that the hand carrying your name is gently touching the ordinary hours of your physical life. To truly master this profound level of peace, you must practice the physical posture of being remembered. When the old, heavy voice rises inside you again, whispering that he has finally forgotten you, you must pause and pose one quiet, firm question to that voice. Is my name still on his palm? Do not raise your volume, and do not frantically argue with the fear. Simply ask the question. The answer is yes. The answer has always been yes, and the answer will continuously be yes, regardless of how the chaotic day around you is going. When you receive that answer, I want you to inhale slowly through your nose, pause at the top for a single heartbeat, and then release the breath outward without forcing it, allowing the out-breath to last a full beat longer than the in-breath. That deliberate, drawn-out exhale physically signals to your weary nervous system that the attending of heaven is absolutely not in jeopardy. It signals to your heavy chest that the one whose palm bears your name has never once stepped away from his eternal post. A drawn-out exhale is the smallest, most beautiful affirmation a physical body can offer in the felt, undeniable nearness of being completely remembered by God. Before this profound prophetic broadcast completely concludes, I need you to permanently seal this massive revelation into the very foundation of your internal spiritual architecture. A number of you will want to sprint past this relief because true relief is a territory you have not lived in for a very long stretch, but you must force yourself to fully inhabit this territory today. I want you to open your mouth right where you are listening to this heavy message and make this final, bold, audible declaration of faith to completely dissolve the shadows of isolation forever. Say this out loud with absolute, unyielding, and supreme authority. My name is forever engraved, and I rest in his eternal memory. When you vocalize that sacred submission, you are firmly closing the heavy door on the illusions of human abandonment, permanently proving to the spiritual realm that you are walking forward as a deeply loved, heavily anchored, and unshakable heir of the living God. Asterisk.